here. They're watching everything, taking in the information. But getting back into it, it's time for game number 5 of DrJikininki versus Neirea. Who's going to pull ahead and go to match point? It comes down to Dragon Priest versus Jade Druid. Now, this matchup has been around for a while, but the way players approach it has changed over the course of the matchup's lifespan within the past few months.
It really has, and I was always a big proponent of the fact that Jade Druid was a favorite in this matchup. I think if Jade Druid is in the hands of a very strong player, they understand how to get the game won, and that's that. Build your Jades, draw a lot of cards. Your Jades are bigger than their stuff. It means your stuff wins. However, I've been seeing Dragon Priests get a little bit more aggressive, play much more for tempo, be willing to take more risks, make more sacrifices, and that's really the way you get the edge in this matchup. Your cards are very strong in the early game, and for Neirea's deck, it doesn't answer health-efficient minions that well. That's something Dr. J should look to take advantage of, is the fact that his minions are not answered that well, and as a result, he can get a lot of damage in because of it.
Yeah, a lot of times the strategy in this matchup is to sort of ignore the small Jades that the Jade Druid is making and get in face damage while you can. There are a few cards that make it a little bit tougher. Neirea does have Druid of the Claw, which has sort of been making its way into lists. It wasn't in lists, a month ago even, and that was where Dragon Priest started to get those higher win rates against Jade Druid. But now that it's sort of made a comeback, especially coming out as early as turn 2, 4 health minions are tough for Priest to deal with. And if you can get ahead on the board as the Jade Druid, boy, you're in for a pretty good time.
Now I am a little bit curious about this. Neirea chose to taunt it up. There's not really much risk to it, but it certainly opens up the question, could he have just simply charged it and taken out the Northshire Cleric straight away? He wants the extra 2 health here, but it does potentially give Dr. J an opportunity to maybe get a card later on or force some disruption. You can see Neirea's turn 3 being dead, I think, is a big factor to this. If Dr. J wants to draw a card from this Northshire Cleric, it's going to be set up for a kill next turn anyway. And he would have to have Power Word Shield to go with it. All the factors here point to the 4-6 being better, even though he could have killed the Northshire Cleric immediately. The extra health on that means he might live an extra turn at some point.
Yeah, you look at like the turn 3, what is Dragon Priest going to play on turn 3? He would have been punished by like Blackwing Corruptor, but that's about it. Dr. J is loading up the board saying, eventually I'll get through this sucker.
Whoa, and he attacks in.
Ooh.
I don't know about that, TJ. That is a really inefficient attack, and now he's actually sacrificed his other Northshire Cleric. Hero Power clears off the first one. Druid of the Claw hits the second one. That attack was a blunder, I think.
Without Northshire Clerics, Druid's going to beat you on card draw every time. Even with Draken and Operatives, even with Bran, they're going to beat you. They have Wrath for one. They have Azure Drakes. They have Nourishes. They have Gadget and Auctioneer, Wild Growths later on in the game. They will outvalue you the longer the game goes on. And those Northshire Clerics, they're donezo.
I don't think Dr. J would have had much liberty of really getting much out of them either. It's just the Druid of the Claw providing so much board presence that not really much Dr. J can do about that. Just caught in a bad spot. I mean, turn 2 Druid of the Claw. Druid of the Claw is a nightmare for Priest on turn 5, let alone turn 2.
Neirea's just curving out.
It's a good way to do it.
The only thing, though, is he willing to give up control of the board to start ramping up these Jades? Because there's a potential, without using Swipe, that his board can get cleared and Dr. J can have initiative. But now, Neirea's rolling into Azure Drake. Then he has double Jade Behemoth to follow it up, which is going to be 3/3 Jade plus 4/4 Jade.
Big thing to talk about here is the tech choices from Dr. J. We've seen Bookworm in his hand stranded in the prior 2 games. In this matchup, Bookworm can do some work. Taking out that 3/6 Behemoth right away often opens up your trades. A lot of times, Neirea is just going to rely on that 3/6 taunt to block the way for damage or to save his other minions. If Bookworm is a factor, that is huge for Dr. J. So he's got a couple turns to pick it up, and it looks like he's going to force a swipe here. I don't think Neirea can leave this brain alive.
No, he can. Oh, man. That is having a playoff curve here.
That's why Neirea kept that swipe, is for a turn like this one.
Yeah. He's got to do it. Especially going into the later turns. If you let them get off a Bran Draconid Operative, it can sometimes spell the end, especially since Neirea fought so hard to get that value advantage early on and that board advantage. He's still going to roll into Jade Behemoth, but now these Jade Behemoths are lining up against the board much differently. He's got a 5-4 line up against a 3-6. They can take it out and, you know, isolate that 3-3 Jade, which isn't that powerful yet. At this stage in the game, it's actually probably above average, I'd say.
Yep. Finally a dragon for Dr. J. If Neirea had left the brand up, he actually wouldn't have gotten punished nearly as hard. There was no activation readily available. And so now Dr. J getting some information and potentially some cards that are going to help him out a bit. Every Druid card feels like it's pretty good in Priest.
Except the Jades.
Yeah.
Everything but the Jades. Azure Drake has natural synergy with the deck. Swipe allows Priest to have a little bit of wider removal than they're used to having. One thing that Priest struggle with is sort of spot removal on like 4 health minions. Swipe can help that. Wrath can also help that. Allows them to, you know, build minions and clear the board, which is another thing that I struggle with. A lot of times they have to make trades instead of using spells. But here comes the Jade train from Neirea. He's got plenty of card draw to back it up. If he takes control of the board at any stage, Dr. J's in trouble.
Well, it's a good clear for Dr. J. But never utilized Shadow Word Pain, never utilized Bookworm in that spot. I think it's something to look out for as this game goes long. Those cards are going to grow very weak as this game continues. Neirea just continues to play at a blistering pace.
That second Druid of the Claw drawn. Keep in mind, Neirea does have 1 copy of Ancient of War, 1 copy of Mulch, and 1 copy of Living Roots in his deck. So it is teched a little bit differently than you'll see a lot of other Jade Druids.
Big draw for Dr. J here.
Yeah. Another Draconid operative.
Not so big on the pickup side.
Now, Aya is just a pretty strong minion. You know, even at 1-1, it's still okay. But Throwaway just lines up so nicely against this Azure Drake to be able to keep the Draconid operative healthy. You mentioned earlier, one thing that I really liked is your minions have very high health totals. They have health advantage over Druid minions a lot of the time.
Another good draw, but Neirea, he's got to fear Shadow or Death at this point. Those cards have been in Dr. J's hand for so long.
But look at his turn if he doesn't play Ancient of War. He plays a smaller minion that still probably gets run over and then plays nothing else.
That's why he's uncomfortable right now. This is some of the bit of emotion that we've seen from Neirea at times. When he's in a tough spot, that's when he starts thinking a little bit deeper. Is there any way I can get away with not playing this Ancient of War right now?
It's funny. One thing that stood out to me that of something that Neirea said.
Uh-oh.
He said that sometimes it's better to not think too hard and rely on your instincts than try and overthink things in a tournament setting.
And that's a good thing to do. I mean, that's one of the reasons these guys practice and they think about the game is so they don't have to be in spots where they're making tough decisions in crunch time. So it's important to be practicing and thinking about it and knowing what to do when you're in the moment. And sometimes when you get in unfamiliar spots, it's really tough to think because all that pressure's on. So obviously having a bit of a technical issue here, we'll get back into our games as quickly as we can. It's just we're at the mercy of technology at times.
Yeah, the game is still going on. To keep that in mind. Nothing has interrupted from the player's perspective. They're still playing the game. We'll get back into it as soon as possible. You know what? We're just going to role play a little bit.
Right over the shoulder.
We're just going to zoom in right over their shoulder. Just really get into it. I felt like Neirea there.
Honestly, that's a great shot. Love it.
Swipe drawn. Oh, and he picks that up right away.
It looked like it was necessary. That was a lot of power Dr. J had on board.
This is cool. I just want to cast Hearthstone like this all the time.
It's really easy to read the health totals.
And see the hand. But yeah, Dr. J, you can see him thinking pretty heavily here. Only 4 cards left for Neirea, so Dr. J can maybe feel like he's sort of winning this value game, but he still needs to keep the pressure up. And it looks like Neirea's at 14 health. If I can use my superhuman vision to read that number correctly. Now he's at 12. So it is a lot of pressure. Dr. J has that power on the board. But if we remember back to when we could see the hand, he's got a few situational cards.
If he's drawing this way, he's under pressure. And 2 Wraths certainly going to help him. So the game state did not change whatsoever. This was the same game that was happening earlier on. These players are picking it up. We will have to remain with this position for now. as we resolve the tech issue. But suddenly, looks like Neirea's got the board.
Yeah, we're unable to reconnect to the spectator client, so we apologize, but we are going to stick with this perspective for the remainder of this game. Sort of add a little bit of suspense to the action as Neirea's starting to get very low in health, and Dr. J trying his best to keep up the pressure.
It's really interesting to watch the mouse movement, too. Dr. J constantly looking at the number of cards that Neirea has left. Fatigue is not an option for Dr. J in this matchup. Jade Idol will almost always provide a replenishing tool for Neirea to just shuffle through more into his deck and keep going.
Yeah, a lot of times what he is he's probably trying to look for how many cards are left so he can see what kind of outs Dr. J has.
Exactly.
And what's the percentage of those outs. So it is good to keep reminding yourself, how many cards does my opponent have left? He has 13 cards left. He has 1 Shadow Word Death left. So he's got a 1 in 12 chance to draw next turn that Shadow Word Death. Something along those lines. And a lot of times you'll see players do that.
Now, if he can force Neirea to use the other Jade Idol for board presence, that's another story. And he actually is going to use it there for board presence. So it seems to me like Neirea smells blood. This is his time to giddy up. Unless he'd already shuffled. If he's already shuffled, well, then I missed that part. Apologies.
Yeah. This is crunch time. Neirea's getting very low. He can pinpoint the range from Dr. J. That's another spike historian picked up. You can see his hand right now. It's Shadow Word Pain, Twilight Whelp, and Dragonfire Potion. Bookworm, Alexstrasza, and Volcanic Drake are the options.
Not the strongest.
I mean, Alexstrasza is just an 8/8.
So are the Jades.
So are the Jades. Fair point. Fair point.
This is not okay for Dr. J right now. Dragonfire Potion is a card that has to be timed so well in this matchup, and if Neirea gets past the point where that card's super effective, it often just ends up being a dead card in Dr. J's hand. The fact that he couldn't find a spot to use that this game, certainly a big factor into him living those extra turns, maybe finding that little bit of extra damage, but the value for Neirea is so real right now. The roles have completely reversed from what it was in the mid stages.
Yeah, if he can take full control of the board next turn while also developing bigger Jades to play around the possible Dragonfire Potion, he's got the game locked up. And I like the choice from Dr. J. He really needs to ride that pressure in the next turn. He can't afford to take something that he's not going to even use on this turn, I don't think, or that is already redundant since he had Shadow Word Pain. And taking a look, there's the
Look how patient Neirea was with that Ancient Award too. Oh my god, I can't even believe that was still in his hand. I just assumed that had been played and died already in the moments that we had missed. And now the board is crushed. He's got everything in the world. There's just no counterplay here. Dr. J's got nothing left.
I think that locks it up. Dr. J, he's going to look at the Dragonfire Potion that's still sitting in his hand. He picks up an unactivated Blackwing Corruptor. And he's going to look at this board and say, there is no way that I get through this. That 7/7 lives, that 8/8 lives, and the Ancient of War lives. And that's just lethal damage on board. He's going to go through every possible scenario in his head. But I can imagine we're going to see a concede here. And in rare fashion, we actually get to see him press the button. And Neirea takes the win.